The Senate has voted and approved the raising of the debt ceiling. It looks like it's gone over to Congress too. I haven't checked into that yet at this point here, but it looks like it's going to the president's desk just hours before the deadline. So we'll talk about what this means and, of course, debt forever ceasing never. But we'll go over what's going on with that. The Kim Potter trial continues as jurors hear the difference between a gun and a taser. So we'll go over some of what's going on with that. Big Meat is blamed for what's going on with the prices at the pump, the prices of inflation, and everything else off of this. So we'll see if we can indeed beat Big Meat. And Vosh and Hassan Piker are both banned from Twitch for saying a word that, well, I thought was innocuous, and I'm actually not going to say it on Twitch myself. It is going to be all this and more, though. Let's go, Brandon. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. All right, we are here. It's a little bit late again, but we are here. We're ready to go, and we have got a bunch of stuff to get to today. Once again, it's not as packed of a day as it's been, and hopefully we can fly through this. We can finish everything out here, including a few leftovers that we had from yesterday as well. I know we didn't touch on anything with the Kim Potter trial, even though I had it up on the stack yesterday, and that is something we should be paying attention to. I am so amazed that this is even going to trial. I was always of the understanding that she had pled guilty to this. I don't know if some unscrupulous lawyer out there somewhere looked at this and said, hey, after the Chauvin thing, I can go get my 15 minutes of fame. Hey, let's go try to take this to trial or something like that. But it's weird because, it was to my understanding after all that happened. Like the next day that she went off, turned herself in and, said, okay, I did this. I made the mistake. I had a problem here. But we'll talk about what's going on with that. What's going on over there. I got some video at the after the finance aspect to show you guys as well, some stuff that's going on there, and a little bit of a catch up off something here because I didn't catch something right away when we talked about the January 6th thing and the warmonger Liz Cheney talking about that as well. I didn't catch this at first. I didn't think about it until later, so we'll update how I feel about that and where that goes as well. But before we get started, you guys do make sure you go check out TurnSomePagesProductions.com. I know Bobby Joe was chomping at the bit to go and get this started here, so I signed up for Give, Send, Go last night. I do have to go back and check into a couple things here because I saw some information when I was setting up the new one that I didn't have, that I didn't know that I needed here, so I'm going to do a little bit of research after work today to see if I can get the Give, Send, Go started. I don't know if I have to run this right now as an individual, or if I have, because they asked me for an EIN number, and I don't believe I have one of those for Turn Some Pages yet. So I don't know if I have to go back and register that as far as an EIN number or anything else to go, but we'll get this started. We'll get ready to go off this, and I promise you we'll find a way for you guys to come back and donate to this because we will carry great shows. It's not just this show, but we'll carry great shows such as the Daily Ignoramus, the Breakdown with Birkenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, the Freckles and Brit Show, and the Porch Boys. So go and check all those shows out. They're all great friends to the network here. Remember, the R-Rated Conservative no longer on YouTube. He is just going to be on Rumble as far as your on-demand video hosting site as well, which, of course, we all know is going to be Trump's new site as well. So a lot of stuff changing here, a lot of stuff shaking, a lot of stuff coming out here, and you're just going to have to keep paying attention to this to see what's going to happen with this. All right, but go check out TurnSomePagesProductions.com. Let's get the live chat up here and see what we've got going on with that. Let's get into the finance here. The Dow took another small dropped down yesterday, down 106.77 points, or about 1/3% to 35,544.18. And after the futures, because the futures were on the rise yesterday, it did try, and it tried to claw its way back again at the end of this. But just there's so much working against the Dow right now, especially on the industrials, and even when we see the industrial metals and the prices going there, there's a lot that's moving against this particular index, and the other ones follow suit at this point. So that's what we see coming off of that. Let's look at the Bitcoin. Let's get it refreshed because that's last night's price. The Bitcoin dropped overnight to 47,644.90 after holding fairly steady throughout the past day, down to $710 and 80 US cents, or 1.47%, throughout the 24-hour period. So it might be on sale again, but there again, as I've always said, I'm more apt to go into lesser known cryptos. Like Shibu is the one that I'm really trying to push right now. I think the Doge, and the Doge had a little interesting bit yesterday too, where for like 5 minutes a bunch of people were Bitcoin trillionaires because I don't know if Coinbase didn't enter something right or something, some sort of data didn't get out there right away, and decimal wasn't in the right place, and people were just filthy rich off of Doge for a moment, and then it all corrected itself back out. I'm telling you, I'd like to see the Shibu go on the rise, though. That's the one I think that we need to see on the rise here, because that's, well, obviously I have 237,000 Shibu coins. So if you guys start buying it, I'm going to get fairly rich. And hell, throw a 20 into it. That'll really start to move some stuff at least, but that's what we see off of that. Looking at your scrap metal prices, looks like we've got a down on the average all across the board for the big three: copper, steel, and aluminum. And I looked at the chart before, like when I first brought this up this morning, I looked at the chart and there is a lot of red here. All copper plays and brass plays are down. All steel plays are down. All aluminum plays are down. Motors are down. Ballasts are down. Lead is down. Batteries are up. So if you got your car battery, bring that over to the recycling center. Now, I would bring it over to Walmart for the core before I brought it to the recycling center, but you can bring that over to the recycling center. Your catalytic converters are all up, but, you know, going back into the other stuff, your chip plays and your other industrials, it's all red. There's a lot of red on the metal prices today. So I don't know if it's just people all try to bring their stuff in at once because they needed holiday money. You know, that's what we see sometimes. That's what I've been speculating for the Bitcoin price dropping off too. It's just people needing holiday money, the Shibu price or anything else like that. Because it is that time. And while the unemployment is it's at historic lows, man, come on. The labor force participation isn't. So if people have some stuff around the house, just anything they can, they get that today. This year's hot new toy, which I have no idea what it is, but that's what we see off of that. All right, let's see what IBD is, what they're saying here. Dow Jones falls, Tesla stock slips on Elon Musk move, Senate approves debt ceiling hike. From Michael Larkin. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell as Microsoft and Apple were dragged lower. The Senate voted to approve a rise in the debt ceiling following a push by Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. Meanwhile, Tesla short-circuited after another stock sale by Elon Musk. While overall action was negative, logistics play Schneider stood out, moving above any entry point. Buying stocks when the market is in a correction is not advisable, however. Also, the stock erased most gains. The Senate has approved the debt ceiling increase. Congress moves closer to raising the debt ceiling Tuesday after the Senate approved a $2.5 trillion debt ceiling increase in a 50-49 vote. It is expected the House will approve the measure and that the President will sign the measure either late Tuesday or early Wednesday. This is from last night, by the way. And as of now, from everything I've seen around here, the President hasn't signed it yet, but it does look like Congress has approved it. Schumer said early Tuesday that they will raise the debt limit to a level commensurate with the funding necessary to get into 2023. It comes after the Democratic leader cut a deal with Republican counterpart Mitch McConnell that will allow the Senate to raise the debt ceiling on a one-time basis via a simple majority. This means it does not need to go through a reconciliation process. And, McConnell, I have reminded you of this before, and we'll talk more about this when we get into the main article. You own this. You can get up there and speak through your non-moving teeth and say, "Oh yes, we put this up here so Democrats can own this. And we got the procedural hurdle out of the way, so it could be all Democrat votes on the debt ceiling hike itself." No. You enabled this, McConnell. You enabled this, and now all of our kids, forever, will have to look down a above $30 trillion debt. Thank you, Mitch McConnell. And also for approving the massive stimulus plans that put us into this point as well. Mitch McConnell is nobody's friend. Oh, but it was so exciting when he put on the tan suit and he tried to troll Obama. Yeah, fuck that. I agree with trolling Obama, but that was too little too late at that point. The Nasdaq rallied off lows, but still closed below the 50-day moving average after dipping 1.1%. Peloton Interactive was one of the worst laggards after notching 5% drop. Atlassian Team also struggled, sliding 4.9%. The S&P 500 also struggled, dropping 0.7%. It did manage to hold above its 50-day line, though Adobe, Enphase Energy, and ServiceNow were some of the worst laggards at that index. The S&P 500 sectors were mostly in the red, with only financials closing in positive territory. Technology and real estate were the worst performing areas. Small caps were once again hit, with the Russell 2000 falling 0.8%. But growth stocks were given the worst mauling of all by rampaging bears. The Invader IBD 50 ETF, a bellwether for growth stocks, skidded 1.5%. The ETF is falling further away from the long-term 200-day moving average, which is a key technical benchmark. So that's what we're seeing off this, and of course, we're not going to see the futures because this is last night's article. I didn't see this morning's IBD article. For whatever reason, I looked for it, but this is what was awful last night. Let's grab one here from Ron Helton's favorite publication, from his favorite politician ever, Bloomberg, talking about crypto. Dow Jones securitized partner on tokenized crypto funds. From Bildana Hajrik. Digital asset firm Securitize is launching 2 tokenized funds that will track crypto indexes from the S&P Dow Jones indices. The funds, which will track the cryptocurrency large cap X mega cap index as well as the Kensho New Economies Composite Index from S&P, are among the first such funds and will be only available to accredited investors. The large cap ones give investors exposure to more than 30 different cryptocurrencies, while the latter is centered around fintech, the artificial intelligence, and virtual reality, among other things. Each fund will charge the management a fee of 0.5%. The new tokenized funds provide investors exposure to a diverse blend of cryptocurrencies and emerging technologies. Wilfred Day, the head of Securitize Capital, the asset management arm of Securitize, said in a press release, in particular, they're a new, efficient option for family offices, institutions, and accredited investors looking for exposure to promising cryptocurrencies and exposure to disruptive global companies. Scrutinize has partnered with Anchorage Digital, Copper Technologies, and Interactive Brokers on a custody and management of the fund's assets according to the release. And this is one of the things, by the way, this is bringing crypto back into your mainstream. When it starts getting traded over by ETFs, like we saw with Bitcoin earlier on this year, and now a tokenized fund that will help track the indices from all 3 of your major markets. This is bringing this into this is, and we saw this with the infrastructure bill as they're trying to regulate this more with laws that are put into both the infrastructure bill and the Build Back Bullshit bill, is that they're trying to bring this out for mainstream because they want. Now, they don't want you to have a bunch of crypto. They want you to be regulated out of it. You, me, etc. The people who were out here getting rich, but especially with Bitcoin, because that's the big one here. And of course, well, the Patriot, what was the name of the pipeline? Was it the Patriot Pipeline down in Georgia? Colonial Pipeline, the Colonial Pipeline. Oh, well, after the Colonial Pipeline got hacked, well, they got their payment in Bitcoin. because it's untraceable, even though they got all the Bitcoin back off of this. But this is putting some of these cryptos into the hands of where people, Soccer Mom America, can go in and say, oh, well, I think this will go good in my 401k. And then they go out and buy the crypto, balloon the price even more, and these people, the people at the top that are making the exchange-traded funds, turn into billionaires over this. They don't want you to have upward mobility from it, but they want to have upward mobility from this. And this is the next step into it. I understand where our friend Ron says if you can't hold it or mold it, you should have already sold it, but this is not the time to get out of crypto if you're already into it. This might not be the time to get into it brand new, but this is not the time to get out of it if you're not already, if you're already into it. Wow, I'm tripping over my words as bad as I can this morning. Because the elites want it all. They want all the control and all the power over it, and leave you still clawing for a way to get upward mobility. But that's what we see off of that. Alright, let's get into the major news of the day. Now, there are a couple things that I want to start with before we start talking about the debt. Which, first, I want to figure out what this was supposed to be. Yes, this is what this was supposed to be. I was like, why am I on the Explore page for Hannity? Oh yeah, because I wanted to see where that was going with Liz Cheney. But let's start with listening to the Houseplant Chief and what he has to say and how imposing he is by saying it.
Now we look at 2022. I want to tell my Republican friends, get ready, pal. You're going in for a problem. And we need to stay. My Republican friends, get ready, pal. You're going in for a problem.
Who the hell is Val? And why is she getting ready?
And we need to stay unified. You're going in for a problem. And we need to stay.
You're going to in for a problem, man. Come on. Get ready, Val. Come on.
I want to tell my Republican friends, get ready, pal. You're going in for a problem. And we need to stay unified. Now we look at.
So that's what Mr. Biden has to say. Here's what China has to say on the world stage right now.
美军在阿富汗杀害平民的暴行
The atrocity of killing civilians in Afghanistan is unacceptable.
不可接受。美国以各种理由为凶手开脱，
It is even more unacceptable that the U.S. exonerates the perpetrators
使其免受惩罚的行为更令人
with
无法容
impunity on
忍。
various
当美方在
grounds. While the U.S. talked about democracy and human rights
领导人民主峰会上搭谈民主
at the Summit for Democracy,
人权的时候，那些死于
the innocent Afghan people
美军枪口下的
who were gunned down by the U.S. military were forgotten.
阿富汗无辜民众却没有人过问，他们家人的
And the
冤
killers
屈
remain beyond justice. Let's actually crank this down just a little bit.
却无处申诉。这就是美国
This is the harsh reality brought to the world
带给世界的
by the American-style
残酷现实
democracy and
我们
human
谴责
rights.
美方
We condemn brutal
打着
military
民主人权
intervention
旗号对阿
by
富
the
汗
U.S. in
伊拉克
Afghanistan, Iraq, and
叙利亚
Syria
等
in the name of democracy and human rights.
国发动军事干涉的野蛮行径。我们呼吁国际社会
We call on the international community
对美军在
to
世界各
investigate the
地
U.S. military's
滥
war
杀
crimes
无辜
of
平
killing
民的战
innocent
争罪
civilians
行
around
进
the
行调
world
查追责
and hold it
正义
accountable.
或许
Justice
会
may be
迟到，
delayed,
但不会缺席
but will not be
美国无所
denied.
谓
The era in which the U.S. acted arbitrarily in the world
民主人权为借口，在世
under
界
the
上
pretext
肆意妄
of
为
so-called democracy and human rights
的时代已经结束。
is
美
over.
军杀害
The day will come eventually when the U.S. military who killed innocent civilians in other countries will be brought to justice. And, of course, this is the kind of saber-rattling that China can get away with when they don't respect the leader of the country that they're railing against. And I also want to point out the irony when we look at this and ask myself the question, since when does the Chinese military give a flying fuck about people killing unarmed civilians? Uyghurs! Since when do they have a leg to stand on when it comes to that topic? When did they start having that leg to stand on? Now, I am against the foreign intervention and the killing of innocent civilians. I understand that. And I want to stop that too, but I can do that while still calling out China for the fact that they have castrated and enslaved the Uyghurs in their western Xinjiang province. But I also know that if there was a strong leader, the Donald W., as much as I hate him, a strong military presence, I should say, even Obama probably wouldn't be talked to like this, but from the Chinese. Because Obama would get up there, get on the speech and say, well, you know, we're going to have peace. I'm going to be the president. That starts peace in this world. I'm going to end the wars. That my predecessor, that did everything wrong. W. I'm going to end all his mistakes. That's what I'm going to do. And it's going to be about me. That's what it always is. It's always about me. Meanwhile, he presses the little red button and drone strikes this particular person in particular. As he's saying that he's going to put peace around the world, it's all going to be me. And you didn't build that? The government did. Click. And a drone drops a small thermal weapon on this asshole. And CNN surprisingly forgets to cover that event. But places like Beijing, like Afghanistan, like North Korea, know that they can get away with this shit now. So, buckle up and enjoy the next 2 years. Now this is the one that I wanted to touch on here and kind of update my stance off this, because I didn't catch this at first. I've listened to these kinds of speeches from Liz Cheney again and again, telling us about the horrors that happened on January 6th and what was happening once we revealed the text messages. So I want you to listen to what she has to say again, and I'll point out what it was that I noticed off of this.
Why were Fox News hosts texting him, telling him that they needed to get the president out to stop this? Why did they think that the president was the one who could stop this? Because many of those same people now are in fact saying, gosh, this was just tourists. Or this was a false flag operation, another person on Fox News has claimed. So I think there are real questions about what those discussions were. I think there are...
Okay, and with that, the first thing is I still believe that this was a false flag operation. That this was something that was put out there, and we also know at this point that Pelosi did not authorize additional National Guard troops. And, you know, that's the conversation we're having right now with this is, well, Trump came out and gave the text messages to Meadows to say that he wanted the National Guard troops to protect the people as they came in and overthrew democracy! Which, if you believe that, I've got a bridge that goes into my friend Quest's hometown. And I will sell it to you for a low, low price. Just let me get some paperwork over here, and it's going to be cash only, no mortgage. And I will sell that bridge to you right now if you believe that that's what happened here. But I thought about this for a second, and I listened to the fact that Liz Cheney is talking about, well, why were Fox News hosts, if this was a false flag, why were Fox News hosts texting the president's chief of staff, telling him to call it off? If they were in on an inner circle and they knew that this was some major plot to overthrow the government and install a military dictator who is surprisingly isolationist for being a military dictator, if they were all in on it, if they were all this president's big inner circle, why were they trying to get him to stop? If Trump really is this evil, maniacal, although a more retarded version of Goebbels, military dictator, He was going to use the might of his people to overthrow the government, put his pawns into the Capitol to get mowed down as they take more and more people out, as they eliminate Congress and the Senate. And all the people at Fox News were in his inner circle. Why were they calling him? Why were they trying to beg him to get it to stop? The answer is they weren't. There wasn't some big conspiratorial inner circle. There might have been on the other side. I know we had a lot of people out there in the crowds in D.C. There were a lot of people there. We have video evidence of the one. Hey, look at my crisp new MAGA hat. I'm one of you. Hey, we can't just come out here and protest and let our grievances be aired. We have to go into the Capitol. Don't you want to go into the Capitol, fellow patriots? Don't you want to go inside of there and tell Mike Pence exactly how you feel, fellow patriots? My MAGA hat is so clean. Look how crisp and fresh it is. I am definitely one of you. Let us go into the Capitol. As a lot of the people in the crowd, the day before, not the day of, obviously. We saw what happened the day of, but the day before, we're looking, Fed! That bothered me. Because they're trying to spin this narrative, and by the way, in the name of while they're trying to spin this narrative, why they're trying to talk about Newsmax and One American News and Fox News, how horrible is this? This is happening at CNN from the New York Post. Former Chris Cuomo producer trained girls as young as 7 in sexual subservience, court documents show, from Gabrielle Von Rogue. A veteran CNN producer who worked shoulder to shoulder with ex-anchor Chris Cuomo bragged about luring girls as young as 7 to his home for sexual subservience training and believing a believed woman is a woman regardless of age, according to court papers released on Monday. Hold on, we need a sound effect to go with this. John Griffin, who has been suspended from the network pending an investigation into allegations, attempted to lure at least 4 girls ages 16, 14, 13, and 9 to his home in Vermont, to his ski house in Vermont, for deviant training sessions on such things as spanking and cock worship, the documents allege. The 44-year-old cable network honcho was arrested Friday by FBI agents, but his indictment was unsealed Monday. It revealed how the producer used a BDSM dating, fetish, and kink website to try to find parents who would allow Griffin to train their minor daughters to be sexually subservient, the papers claim. Throughout 2020, Griffin had a number of conversations with the purported parents of young girls, to which he espoused a way of life in which women are sexually subservient and inferior to men, prosecutors wrote in a statement. There is a natural, wanton horror at the core of any female, whether she knows it or not, Griffin told a person who claimed to be the mother of a 16-year-old daughter last summer, prosecutors said. He then allegedly proposed a little mother-daughter trip to his Ludlow, Vermont ski house for the sexual training, the indictment says. Around the same time, Griffin spoke to another person who claimed to be the mother of a 13-year-old and 9-year-old girl, saying, "It's your job to concert with me to see the 13-year-old daughters trained properly according to the document." So, in the meantime, while CNN is breathlessly reporting on the sins of Fox News because Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity they were texting Mark Meadows to call it off because somehow they were in the inner circle and they wanted this to happen, but they were still texting to call it off. This is happening at CNN. So, good job with that. All right, let's talk about the debt ceiling. Senate passes debt ceiling increase, sending it to the House hours before the deadline. From Thomas Frank. Congressional Democrats have moved toward raising the debt ceiling Tuesday, one day before the December 15th deadline that Janet Yellen, unobjectively warned, could mark the start of the first ever U.S. default. The effort began in the Senate, which passed the debt limit hike late Tuesday afternoon in a 50-49 party line vote. The bid will go to the House, where the narrow Democratic majority is expected to approve it and send it to President Biden's desk late Tuesday or early Wednesday. He is set to sign it just hours before the Treasury Department forecasts it would exhaust its tools to pay the government's bills. I wonder where they got that arbitrary number anyway, by, December 15th, okay. The resolution would increase the debt ceiling by $2.5 trillion on Tuesday. Schumer said the measure would raise the borrowing limit to a level commensurate with the funding necessary to get into 2023. You could always just slash some of your expenses. Yellen estimated the U.S. would run out of ways to pay its debt on December 15th. If Congress does not raise the debt ceiling before the Treasury misses a payment, the country would default for the first time. The Treasury Secretary said she expects the U.S. would slip into recession, which we're already there, if Washington failed to make its debt payments. A default appears unlikely after 14 Republicans joined every Democrat last week to allow a one-time vote to lift the debt ceiling with a simple majority. The agreement, crafted by Schumer and Minority Leader Turtleman McConnell, ended the GOP's months-long threat to filibuster a borrowing limit hike. The deal allowed Democrats to increase the debt limit on their own without needing the 60 votes usually required to break a filibuster. The Senate is split 50-50 by party. But Vice President Harris did not need to break a tie because Cynthia Lummis of Wyoming missed the votes. Democrats and Republicans typically vote together to raise or suspend the debt ceiling. This time, however, the GOP has contended that Democrats should increase the borrowing limit on their own as they try to pass $1.75 trillion of social safety net and climate package, despite Republican opposition. Honestly, I think some of these programs would be a bad idea if the money were free. Senator Pat Toomey, a Pennsylvania Republican, said of Democrats' Build Back Bullshit plan Tuesday morning on CNBC's Squawk Box. The idea that we're going to throw thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars at American families who have plenty of income, who have income that's multiples of the median income, we're going to give them free programs and free money because they have a child. What is that really accomplishing, Toomey added, other than undermining a sense of personal responsibility and independence? Raising the debt limit does not authorize new government spending. Instead, it's akin to a consumer's credit card borrowing limit and allows the Treasury Department to continue to pay off the nation's bills, which, once again, if you are paying your bills on the credit card, your household has a big fucking problem. The credit card, of course, is for that little thing, that nice little thing that you use to update. But if you're paying the electric bill, the cable bill, your groceries, your fuel to get back and forth to work, if you're paying that on the credit card consistently, you got a bigger problem. Now, with that being said, have I put fuel on the credit card? Yes, I have. Usually it is a temporary measure, like, okay, I'm at the end of a week on a tight week or something. Throw a 20 on the credit card just to get me going back and forth to work for a day. I've done that before. But when I pay the credit card bill the next time, I throw an extra 20 on it to cover what I just paid into that. But for the most part, like I said, yeah, the credit card is for, if I want to buy a new plant. for my carnivorous plant garden. If I want to buy dirt for the garden because I can turn around and make food back up out of that. Which I do have a nice indoor garden, by the way. I think you guys, some of you have seen it on the cooking streams. I have mostly green onions over there right now, and they are a sprouting. Holy crap, do I have a lot of green onions over there. I got a whole bunch of those. But that's what the credit card is for. And yet, our Congress continues to believe that they can continue to put their obligations. We're paying our bills on the credit card. Do you know how bad that makes you sound? How much that makes you sound like you're bad with money? But that's what they say. No, I understand using a credit card for the miles. Actually, I did do that for a while when I worked at in Madison. I used to, before I went low carb, I used to have Chinese food every Thursday night. It was a part of the OCD that came over from the heroin addict incident. It was a part of that OCD, but all of my coworkers wanted to get on the action. So I would just, because they paid me in cash for everything, I would put the whole thing on the credit card. And then every week, actually, I would take back the money, put it in my checking account, and pay the credit card bill with it right away. But I got the miles from it. I do understand that maneuver. But that's what we see right there. It looks like, yeah, $3 trillion, so that will push us over the $30 trillion mark. Another one, just a little bit more on the same topic here, from CNN. Senate votes to increase the debt limit by $2.5 trillion, extending into 2023. From Claire Ferran and Ali Zaslav. The Senate voted on Tuesday to raise the national debt limit by $2.5 trillion and extend it into 2023 as lawmakers race to avert a catastrophic default ahead of a critical midweek deadline. The House will next have to approve the legislation before it can be sent to President Biden to be signed into law. The final tally for the Senate vote, which fell along party lines, was 50 to 49. Yellen warned the debt limit could be reached on December 15th, leaving Congress little time to resolve the issue. A first-ever default would spark economic disaster. And party leaders on both sides of the aisle have made clear it must be prevented. Republicans have insisted, however, Democrats take responsibility for raising the limit and do it on their own. In response, Congress passed legislation last week to create a fast-track process to allow Democrats to raise the debt limit in the Senate without the help from Republicans. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said early Tuesday that the Senate would vote to raise the debt ceiling to a level that will extend the limit into 2023. So, yep, that's what we see coming off of this. This should probably be hitting the president's desk today, and we officially have a $30 trillion debt cap. And I don't think that it's going to make it to 2023 before we hit that either. As Randy pointed out in the chat, $600 billion only lasted 2 months. Was it 2 months? It was 1 month. Yeah. So that's where we're going with that. Let's talk about Ukraine. Putin urges guarantees on Ukraine in a call with Johnson. From the Associated Press at ABC News. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Monday told British Prime Minister Boris Johnson that Moscow will insist on Western guarantees, including NATO's expansion into the Ukraine. A recent Russian troop buildup near Ukraine has drawn Ukrainian and Western fears of an invasion, and U.S. President Joe Biden last week warned Putin of severe consequences if Moscow attacks its neighbor. Putin has denied plans of launching an attack, but prodded Western leaders to provide a legal pledge that NATO wouldn't expand into the Ukraine. In Monday's call with Johnson, Putin reaffirmed Moscow's concern about the development of Ukraine's territory by NATO's members, saying that it poses a direct threat to Russia's security. Russia has responded to the ouster of Ukraine's Moscow-friendly president by annexing the Ukrainian Crimean Peninsula in 2014 and throwing its support behind a separatist insurgency in the country's east. More than 7 years of fighting has killed over 14,000 people and devastated Ukraine's industrial heartland called Donbas. Moscow has bristled at NATO's joint drills with Ukrainian forces and warned that the alliance's expansion into the Ukraine would represent a red line for Russia. In Monday's call with Johnson, Putin emphasized the need to immediately begin negotiations to work to clear out international legal agreements that would exclude any further NATO expansion eastward and deployment of weapons threatening Russia in neighboring countries, primarily Ukraine. The Russian leader said Russia will soon resubmit a draft document outlining the demands according to the Kremlin. Johnson followed Biden and other Western leaders in warning Moscow against attacking its neighbor. Johnson's office said that he expressed the United Kingdom's deep concern over the buildup of Russian forces on the Ukraine's border, and reiterated the importance of working through diplomatic channels to de-escalate tensions and identify durable situations. And the fact that now Britain is getting in on this too, on top of Germany, the US, and a host of other NATO countries here, and the fact that we're talking about bringing the Ukraine into the NATO, tells me that something's probably going to happen off of this. And it's probably going to be aggressed by Putin, who's going to come out and say, I have no choice, okay? They expand NATO into a country that I want to take over. NATO stands firmly against me, so now I must act. Because I take territory that is rightfully mine. But that's what we see off that. Let's grab one from Reuters. Ukraine allows foreign forces to join planned 2022 military drills. No author given. Ukraine's parliament approved a Tuesday draft law that allows foreign troops to take part in military exercises on the territory of the former Soviet Republic in 2022, a move likely to infuriate Russia. According to the draft law submitted by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine plans to hold 10 large military exercises next year. Ukraine, which is not a member of NATO, has stepped up military cooperation with Western countries amid an increase in hostile activity by Russia and its proxies, and has raised the risk of open war between the two neighbors. Kiev accuses Moscow of deploying some 90,000 troops. That's 120,000 troops. Along their shared border, Moscow says its moves are purely defensive and that it has the right to move forces around its own territory as it sees fit. It does. You are correct on that. Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister Anatoly Petrenko told Parliament before the vote that 21,000 Ukrainians and 11,500 military personnel from the US, Britain, Poland, Romania, and other countries would participate in exercises on land, at sea, and in the air. Conducting multinational exercises with the territory will help strengthen national defense capabilities and support political and diplomatic efforts to maintain stability in the region, said Petrenko. There was no immediate response on Tuesday from Russia to the Ukrainian parliament's approval of the draft law. That is correct. They can move their troops wherever they want them. But I mean, if anybody's ever played Civilization, particularly Civ 5, which I've played, I haven't played Civ 6 yet. Although, the command center here will probably handle Civ 6. I haven't played it yet. Because that's a lot of money for a video game. And I've got other ones to play right now. Plus, I have Civ 5. But if you've ever played a Civilization game, what happens when you start massing troops at one of your neighbor's borders? They come out here and they look around and they say, hey buddy, what are you doing? What are you doing? Because if you're amassing troops at a specific border, that usually means that you're planning something. But we'll see what happens with that. I'll just grab one from the USA Today. This page was last archived 9 hours ago. Russia-Ukraine conflict. America needs a better idea than NATO expansion to keep the peace. From Michael O'Hanlon. Can it really be true on this date in 2021 that a large-scale war in Europe is again possible? Why are 100,000 Russian troops massing near the country's border with neighboring Ukraine? A country with which Russia shares a close history, religion, culture, and previous membership in the Soviet Union. And most of all, what can the US and allies do about the situation? President Biden has taken the Russian troop buildup seriously, as he should. His call last week with President Putin provided a good start to crisis management. Okay. Warning Putin about the more severe economic punishment than Russia has experienced to date. If it should invade Ukraine, Biden struck the right balance. He appears to have avoided ill-advised threats to start World War III over a distant part of Europe, not integral to core American security, yet sent an unmistakable message of firmness. U.S. and European sanctions imposed over the past 7 years since Russia grabbed back Crimea from the Ukraine with its Little Green Men attack and then formed a separatist revolt in Ukraine's east that has since killed 13,000, have kept the Russian economy on its back. Its gross domestic product, with growth for a decade, averaged just 1% a year. I would have preferred that Biden be even more specific about the types of new sanctions and related steps we might consider. For example, he could have promised that NATO would fund construction of a more liquid natural gas terminals in Western Europe to reduce the region's need for Russian gas should Putin choose war. But the message was still well delivered in a calm yet firm manner. In the past 7 years of previous policy gave it credibility. Or, the US could start selling the gas to the European Union and eliminate the need for Russian gas. And think of all the American jobs that would open back up. However, we need to think bigger. The crisis this year arose partly because Ukrainian President Zelensky recently asked NATO to bring his country into the Western alliance soon. He wonders why we have not done so. After all, back in 2008, during the Bush administration, the US and NATO allies promised they would in fact someday invite Ukraine and Georgia into NATO, though they provided no timetable and no interim security help, in effect painting a bullseye on the back of both countries. Putin has been sure to keep them unstable and thus ineligible for NATO membership ever since. Some might think it was wise to accept Ukraine in as a NATO member, along with the promise of American and other allied direct military help in the event of a future war. NATO was founded on its Article 5 Mutual Defense Pledge and has worked very hard since 2014 to prove it's serious about backing that pledge, and the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, as well as other Eastern European members like Poland, wouldn't bring the Ukraine and Georgia into NATO, discourage Russia from any aggression. Alright, I gotta step away from the desk for just a second. I will be back in just a moment here. Apologize for that one there. That was on my bad. All right. Anyway, going back off with this. Going on with what they had to say here, we should rethink the NATO expansion idea. It's virtually guaranteed to provoke Putin and most other Russians. Moreover, Putin's big military exercise is demonstrating he can get to Ukraine a lot faster than we can. With big forces, are we really ready to compensate for our short-term conventional military inferiority in any crisis? There, with a huge buildup like that of Desert Storm, or with the threat of nuclear war. How would we defend Ukraine and Georgia if Putin or another future Russian leader decided to test our mettle after we brought them into the alliance someday? NATO was not created and should not be now used in an attempt to solve every European security problem. It started in 1949 with just 12 members. It added only 4 in the next 40 years: Germany, Greece, Spain, and Turkey. Visionaries like the great American statesman of the yesteryear, George Kennan, saw the original purpose of a unified West ensuring that the core industrial, economic, and military regions of the world would not fall under the sway of hostile power. The idea was not, and should not now be, growth for growth's sake. NATO is not a club of democracies trying to enlarge as much as it can. Now, I both agree and disagree with this. As far as what NATO was incepted to keep Russia from encroaching out into the rest of Europe. That's why we started to bring the other 4 members: Germany, Greece, Spain, and Turkey. NATO is supposed to be only 4 stable countries, which the Ukraine is not. That's where I disagree with this. Where I agree with this is the fact that Russia is aggressing, once again, against one of its former vassal states, who clearly does not want to be a part of Russia anymore, with the exception of one region off to the side. Now, as far as what is happening with the Ukraine right now, as far as I understand it, as far as that and bringing it into NATO, there would have to be a give and take for me if the Ukraine was to be brought into NATO. Now, there is a separatist force that has killed 13,000 people in eastern Ukraine, where it touches Russia, where the separatists are Russian-backed. I know we look back at what Biden said about conceding that, just conceding that, even though the red-haired bobblehead tells us he never had that on the table. But where we talked last week about the fact that we were possibly considering letting that particular territory be conceded out to Russia. I think if the Ukraine were to be brought into NATO, that would have to be on the table. Because that would solve a lot of the problems that the Ukraine is having currently and its internal struggle, and stabilize the country, I believe. Unless, of course, there are more separatists hit even down into Kiev. That is something that would have to be analyzed. So to bring the Ukraine in, you would have to solve that crisis right there, which possibly could involve ceding out some of that land, letting the separatists join Mother Russia. But I also don't necessarily think that bringing them in is the answer, especially with the conflict going in there, because as far as Putin sees and looks at it with the separatists there, he is losing his subjects if that part of the Ukraine, the part that is controlled by the separatists, comes into NATO. So it's a complicated situation. There is no easy fix to this by any stretch of the imagination. But also, we do not have the person out there with the credentials to fix it. It's just not there. You can't fix this situation by sitting there on a Zoom call with a dazed look and saying, "Come on, man!" And the House is going to get involved in this too. House lawmakers push Biden admin to do more to deter Russian aggression against the Ukraine. From Kylie Atwood, Jennifer Hansler, and Nicole Gowett. U.S. lawmakers who have just returned from a trip to the Ukraine are urging Biden to take proactive steps to prevent further Russian aggression towards the country, and is prepared to place extreme sanctions on Moscow if it moves militarily against its neighbors. Some of the lawmakers, part of a 3-day bipartisan delegation, are recommending cutting off Russia from financial markets if it invades the Ukraine. Other lawmakers are saying that in the meantime, the admin should focus on deterrence, including messaging that makes clear a lot of Russian boys will die on day one, and providing Ukraine with significant enough boost in weapons and supplies that the Russians think twice about invading at all. Yes, troops on the ground, boots on the ground, of course, that's what we're going to come out and do. I learned that we have an important window in the next few weeks to deter further Russian aggression from happening, everything from a limited incursion to include a full-scale invasion, Seth Moulton told CNN. Based on his conversations on the ground, the key thing is that we need to be more focused on preventing Russian action than responding to it. The Mass Democrat and other lawmakers in the House Armed Services Committee met with U.S. partners in Kiev to assess the situation as Russian troops have built up a massive presence along the Ukrainian border, and Russian President Vladimir Putin continued a string of calls to world leaders, speaking to French President Emmanuel Macron and Finnish President Sauli Niinisto on Tuesday, following his December 7th call with President Biden to repeat his demand for guarantees that the North Atlantic Treaty Organization will not expand into the Ukraine or deploy weapons there. The White House says Biden told Putin in a video call that the U.S. is prepared to launch strong economic measures should Russia invade, signaling that these new measures would pack a bigger punch than the sanctions issued in 2014 that failed to stop Russia from occupying Crimea. Biden said that he had told the Russian leader that repercussions of an invasion would be like nothing Putin has ever seen before. And with that, that's where we're at right now. The House is trying to push us into going in there and becoming a big part of this here. I have to wonder, by the way, if Zelensky has threatened to come back out and spill the beans on what actually happened with the Russia-Ukrainian phone, or with the U.S.-Ukrainian phone call that's launched impeachment 1.0. I actually have to wonder if that is, if that's actually a part of this. Because I'm sure that some of the people, and I've speculated, that with the Hunter Biden thing, there were more people that had their hands in the cookie jar than just Biden and Hunter. And that's part of the reason that, A, we had the impeachment there, and why it was such a big deal, and why President Biden was so quick to run after this, because it was only a couple months after impeachment 1.0 that Biden threw his hat into the ring. A, they had to come out here and they had to point out the fact that, no, you see, this was political pressure because Biden was Trump's number one. He was his number one political opponent, even though he hadn't had his hat into the ring yet. And number two, I do believe that a lot of these people had their hands in the cookie jar with this. That's part of the reason they're out here propping this dude up right now. And I have to wonder if it is, if what Zelensky knows and what it is that he's prepared to release if he doesn't get the help that he's demanding right now. But we'll see what happens with that. Let's grab one from the Associated Press, shifting gears, talking about the Kim Potter trial. Jurors at the Potter trial see differences between gun and taser, from Amy Forliti and Steve Karnowski. Prosecutors in the manslaughter trial of a Minnesota police officer charged in the shooting death of Daunte Wright walked jurors through the differences between their handgun and her taser on Monday, seeking to raise questions about how an experienced officer could confuse the two. Wright was killed on April 11th after being pulled over in the Minneapolis suburb of Brooklyn Center for having expired license plate tags and an air freshener hanging from his rearview mirror. Kim Potter, 49, is charged with manslaughter. Potter, a 26-year-old police veteran who resigned 2 days later, has said she meant to use her taser to stop Wright after he pulled away and got back in his car as officers tried to arrest him on a warrant for a weapons charge. Potter is white and Wright was black. His death came while Chauvin was on trial for in nearby Minneapolis for George Floyd's death, set off several nights of angry protests in Brooklyn Center. The defense has called for the shooting a horrific mistake, but also asserted that Potter would have been within her rights to use deadly force on Wright because he might have dragged another officer, then Sergeant Michael Johnson, with his car. Sam McGinnis, a senior special agent with the state's Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, highlighted how Potter's duty belt had holsters that require an officer to take deliberate actions to release the weapon. The gun holster has a snap, while the taser holster has a lever. The handgun, which is black, is also twice as heavy as the yellow taser, McGinnis said. The taser and gun have different triggers, grips, and safety mechanisms, McGinnis testified. The taser also has a laser and LED lights that display before it's fired, which he demonstrated for the jury, while the handgun does not, he said. McGinnis also testified that Potter didn't perform a function test on her taser at the start to her shift, although the Brooklyn Center Police Department policy is that officers are supposed to do that. McGinnis acknowledged under cross that he didn't check to see how widely the department officers complied. Prosecutors have asked the jurors to handle a taser, but Judge Regina Chu didn't allow it after Potter's attorneys objected. Chu said jurors can do so during deliberations if they want. Earlier Monday, Dr. Lauren Jackson, an assistant Hennepin County medical examiner, testified that Potter's bullet caused injuries to Wright's heart and lungs and that those caused his death. He said that one can survive such injuries only for seconds to minutes. Obviously. After Wright was shot, his car drove away and collided seconds later with an oncoming car. Any injuries from the crash were significant in terms of what caused Wright's death. Some officers testified last week they weren't immediately able to approach Wright's car after it crashed because they weren't sure if it was safe to do so. Prosecutors criticized Potter for not immediately radioing in when it happened at the traffic stop. Jackson testified that Wright had some cannabinoids or THC in his metabolites in his blood from smoking marijuana, but that didn't factor into the cause of death. He said the THC metabolites in Wright's blood was on the high end of numbers he'd seen, but still within a normal range for people who use marijuana. So, with that, with a lot of things going with this, I don't believe... I still don't believe this came to trial, unless this came from a fact that Potter was being overcharged. But I don't think she was. She knows she did wrong. Everybody in this knows that she did wrong, that she done the wrong thing. It's not like we're looking at this and we're seeing that, no, this was somebody who, well, obviously with the situation, she was justified in using the force, but it was to my understanding that she resigned and turned herself in after this. I understand why this isn't as big of a deal as some of the other cases off of this. I don't know why they're taking it to trial as such. I don't know why they didn't come back and plead it out unless they wanted to have another TV moment because they want to get some more riots up there. And I do believe that she is going to, especially with this, either cop to a lower charge, which I don't think they can actually do in Minnesota, or be acquitted. But we'll see what happens off of this. From CNN, Minnesota state investigator outlines the differences between Potter's gun and a taser during former officer's trial. From Kim Berryman, Josh Campbell, Eric Levinson, and Amir Vera. Body cam shows a different view of Daunte Wright's deadly police encounter. Let's have a look at this.
It's the first time we're seeing a different view of Daunte Wright's deadly encounter with police.
I shot him! Oh my God!
New police body camera video shows Wright initially cooperating with officers.
You're under arrest, Daunte.
Sergeant Michael Johnson then enters Wright's car from the passenger side, testifying he struggled with Wright for the gear shift.
So he appears to have been trying to move the shift knob.
Yes.
After the shot was fired and the car crashed down the road, Johnson tried to reassure Officer Kim Potter, who had pulled the trigger.
Kim, that guy was trying to take off with me in the car.
Next, a concerning moment for the officer.
No, that's not happening, Kim. I'm giving you my gun, okay? I'm just going to hold on to yours.
The weapon swap, Johnson says, was to preserve evidence.
Kim, can I see my gun real quick?
He later removed the rounds from the gun, fearing Potter may harm herself.
Did Daunte Wright at any time show any sign of stopping, giving up, saying, okay, I'm done?
No.
But it was the potential harm Wright could have done that the defense narrowed in on.
And if he had taken off with you in that car halfway, what would have happened to you?
Probably dragged.
Arguing Potter was protecting Johnson.
Dragged and what?
Injured?
Seriously injured, maybe even dead, right?
Yes.
The state pushed back, trying to show Potter's actions were reckless, the linchpin of a manslaughter conviction.
Could Officer Potter, in using a firearm, have shot you?
Possible.
The defense quick to step in again.
The objection is sustained.
Yes. And when you use deadly force, you have to consider surroundings.
Yes.
And when you...
And again.
Okay.
So, and listening to the defense cross on this, especially, this is important. First off, when we see from the body cam footage, let's actually back up and look at that again, just what it was that she looked like and where she... This is clear that she did not want to use deadly force. She didn't want to kill this kid.
Video shows Wright initially cooperating with officers.
You're under arrest, Dante.
Sergeant Michael Johnson then enters Wright's car from the passenger side, testifying he struggled with Wright for the gear shift.
And so he appears to have been trying to move the shift knob.
Yes.
After the shot was fired and the car crashed down the road, Johnson tried to reassure Officer Kim Potter, who had pulled the trigger.
Kim, that guy was trying to take off.
She's on the ground crying about the fact that she did this. And that blows the... Okay, I do want to come back and talk about the first rule, gun safety here of this, because it is treat every gun if it's loaded, obviously, and then know your target and what's beyond it. But she had no intention on using that, and the defense's cross falls apart on that. Could she have used her deadly force on you? Could she have hurt you off of that? There was no intent to use deadly force. Because she was, especially if she was yelling taser, 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 meant that she was taking into consideration the fact that beyond her target was her comrade, her ally. Now, do I think that she should have manslaughter? Absolutely. Possibly man 3. Maybe not man 1 or 2, but possibly man 3. Absolutely, she should. But if you're going to come out here and use the defense to come out to try to say, oh no, it's because, she was reckless. She didn't know what was beyond her target. She intended for the taser because she was taking into account what was beyond her target. And she was so distraught by what happened off this, knowing full well that there was no intent to use this level of deadly force. And as far as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this was probably one of the first patrols that she had been out on for quite a while, and she was mostly a desk cop, which in and of itself draws its own issues and situations. But if you're attempting to show some sort of malice off of this, revealing this body cam footage, I think you failed. But that's what we have off that. Let's grab one from Care 11. BCA agents review forensic evidence in Dante Wright's death on 4th day of Kim Potter trial. The second week of the trial on Kim Potter, the former Brooklyn Center police officer charged with manslaughter in the April shooting death of Dante Wright, began with Dr. Lauren Jackson, an assistant medical examiner for the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office. Jackson told the court he performed Wright's autopsy on April 12th, a day after he died. Although Jackson noted Wright had superficial injuries to his face, arms, and legs, he said the most significant injury present on Wright's body was a gunshot wound to the chest. No shit, Sherlock! Jackson noted Wright's other injuries appeared to be consistent with the car crash Wright was in after the shooting. He said the gunshot wound was not survivable and determined the manner of Wright's death to be homicide. No shit, Sherlock! Jackson also told the court that upon screening Wright's blood, cannabinoids were found, indicating he ingested marijuana. Jackson told defense attorney Earl Gray, "Is that seriously that dude's name? T. Earl Grey Hot." That quantified numbers of cannabinoids were on the high end of what he usually sees. None of that matters. Everybody knows the Omicronians watching this TV broadcast 1,000 years later know. Just the same as the rest of us already know. That Dante Wright died because he got shot by somebody who tried to place a well-placed taser shot. And now is the time to determine the culpability of this person who clearly didn't want to kill Dante Wright. And the rest of this just appears to be theatrics. Let's talk about Smollett. Black juror Smollett's reaction to news makes no sense. Coming to ABC via the Associated Press. The only black juror on the panel that convicted Jussie Smollett of lying to Chicago police said that he couldn't get past what the actor did not do after he claimed attackers looped a noose around his neck. Rip it off and keep it off. If others saw the noose as Smollett's clumsy effort to portray his attackers as racist, Andre Hope saw it as much more. As an African-American person, I'm not putting that noose back on at all, Andre Hope told WLS-TV. At the start of the trial, Smollett testified that after the attack in downtown Chicago, he returned home and put the rope back around his neck, so police who came to his apartment soon after could see it. Hope was not the only black person who struggled with Smollett's use of such a potent symbol of racism in the U.S. to convince authorities that he was the victim of a hate crime. In an interview with News Station Now after Smollett was found guilty last Thursday, Eddie Johnson, who was Chicago police superintendent in January 2019 when Smollett said he was attacked, said virtually the same thing. I was concerned because I don't think there's many black people in America with a noose around their neck that wouldn't immediately take it off, Johnson said. Hope said the evidence against Smollett was overwhelming. At trial, 2 brothers testified that Smollett recruited them to carry out the fake attack. Hope said that the counter-narrative put forth by Smollett's attorneys that the pair had actually planned the attack on Smollett didn't make any sense. When you just use your common sense as what's there, yeah, it didn't add up, said Hope, a 63-year-old father of 2 who lives in suburban Bellwood, west of Chicago. Yeah, that's pretty well, I can see where he's coming from off that. That's pretty well an indication that this was all a fake. But they tried. The vice president tried to run it as a real thing. Out of my neck of the woods here, from the Blaze, Waukesha residents feel abandoned. After parade terror attack, media doesn't care because it doesn't fit the leftist narrative. From Sarah Taylor. Yeah, apparently Dr. Jill is up there too. I don't know if she realizes what it's like in Waukesha right now, but politically, but apparently she's going to be there. From Sarah Taylor. Victims of the Waukesha, Wisconsin Christmas parade terror attack say that the media has largely forgotten them because the attack doesn't fit the buzzy media narrative, the New York Post reports. Authorities arrested suspect Darrell Brooks after he reportedly drove his SUV into crowds of people at the Waukesha Christmas parade. The attack took the lives of at least 6 people, including an 8-year-old boy, and injured dozens more. Brooks, a hardened violent career criminal and registered sex offender whose Facebook page was once rife with anti-white sentiment, but not anymore, faces 6 counts of intentional homicide in connection with the attack. Here's what the witness's story. Sharon Millard, a 60-year-old performer with the Dancy Granny, said she witnessed her friend, Virginia Sorensen, tossed up in the air like a rag doll after being struck by Brooks's red SUV. No one ever saw him coming, she recalled. He was going so fast, all I knew is Ginny fly up in the air and land in front of me. I saw her curled up and blood coming out of her like a river. I was standing in blood. Millard added that the myriad witnesses saw Brooks drive down the parade route in a zigzag pattern as if to ensure maximum carnage, and aimed to get as many people as he could. They should put him in a room and let us have a go at him, the 8-year-old said. I think he deserves the death penalty. He will burn in hell. Sorensen died as a result of the attack. I can't stop seeing Ginny dying in front of me in my head, Millard said. I know I'm not the only one who was affected like that. I can't imagine us getting over this. 2 other dancing grannies, 71-year-old Leanna Owen and 52-year-old Tamara Durand, were also killed during the parade. William Hospital, the 81-year-old husband of a dancing granny, was killed, as was the 52-year-old Jane Kulik and 8-year-old Jackson Sparks. Krista Ruloff, another bystander, said that she'll never forget the terror that unfolded that fateful day. It was absolutely horrible, Ruloff said. There were bodies everywhere. I felt like I was watching something on TV and it wasn't real. This kind of thing doesn't happen in Waukesha. Waukesha resident and state rep Cindy Dukow told the outlet that their children injured so grievously during the attack that they have to learn how to walk all over again. But at Christmas, Dukow said, because this was a black guy who did it, the media doesn't want to cover it. They were all over the Rittenhouse case because the kid was white. Race doesn't matter to us here, but the media makes everything about race. State Senator Chris Kapenga, who also blasted what he said was the media's narrative surrounding the events, dropping the story and its victims like a hot potato once finding out that the suspect is a hardened criminal who isn't white. The left was so sympathetic to Kyle Rittenhouse's victims, but they're not saying a word about the victims here, Kapenga spat. It's not fitting their narrative. The reality is that this person is pure evil, and the left's soft-on-crime policies are blowing up in their face. But they want to ignore it and hope it goes away. Meanwhile, the parents of an 8-year-old killed at the parade are having to face their first Christmas without him. F in the chat for that. Sean Riley said, "This is going to take a long time for the community to heal following the inexplicable tragedy. It's taken away some of our innocence," Riley admitted. "I don't think that we'll ever feel the same about going to the parade. We feel great sadness for those affected. Some of the injuries were terrible. A lot of people were run over by cars. There are a lot of head injuries. We saw a lot of carnage right in front of them. We're going to be dealing with this for a long time." So, a lot of bad stuff off of this, and, you hate to see it. And I know a lot of you guys don't know Waukesha, like I know Waukesha, and I don't even know Waukesha that well. I used to go out with a girl from Waukesha, and I've gone to with a couple other dates, like the Texas Roadhouse and various stuff up there. I don't know it well, but I know it. And I know people from there, and I know the way that it is. There are good people in Waukesha. It's the place that people go when they still want to work in Milwaukee, but want to escape Milwaukee. And you're really sorry to see something like that happen there. Alright, let's grab one from the Daily Wire. Corporate greed. Psaki blames Big Meat for soaring food prices. From Tim Pierce. White House Press Secretary, red-haired bobblehead, blamed corporate greed on Tuesday when asked about the cause of soaring meat prices in the United States. The price index for meats, poultry, fish, and eggs have swelled 12.8% over the past year. For certain products, the increase is even more pronounced. The price of beef has soared in the price 20.9% since December of 2020, according to the Department of Labor data. Red-haired bobblehead passed the blame on the meat conglomerates, saying they're taking advantage of the pandemic to gouge customers at the grocery aisle. Bobblehead said, "Let's listen."
Go ahead.
There are several progressive groups and lawmakers who are increasingly vocalizing the idea that high inflation is being driven by corporate greed, including companies with high profits, some of whom have met at the White House with the president in recent months. Does the president endorse that idea? Does he think that corporate greed is the big driver of inflation right now?
Well, I think that the president thinks the way people across the country, American families, digest inflation is by price increases. And if you look at industry to industry, it's a little different. So, for example, the president, the Secretary of Agriculture have both spoken to what we've seen as the greed of meat conglomerates. That is an area where people go to the grocery store and they're trying to buy a pound of meat, 2 pounds of meat, 10 pounds of meat. The prices are higher. That is, in his view, and the view of our Secretary of Agriculture, because of, you could call it corporate greed, sure. You could call it jacking up prices during a pandemic. There are other areas where we've seen increases because of supply chain issues, and we're seeing those increases around the world as it relates to gas prices, oil supply, and things along those lines. So I would say there's some areas where we have seen corporations profit from the pandemic, and certainly the president would agree with that component. I don't know the full context of all of their remarks.
I've got one question here, and this actually isn't mine. This comes from our friend Paul, the hairy-chested libertarian. Quote tweeting Stephen Miller, who says that Big Meat has to be taken down. Long overdue. Quote tweeting the tweet that we just saw. But guys, can we as a group, can we beat Big Meat? Thank you, Paul, for that. It's the part of the problem with this, of course, too, is there are problems with supply chains. There are problems with people not wanting to go to work. There are people that don't want to come back off of this. And yes, there are problems with the slaughterhouse chain. We saw this at the beginning of the commie coup. We've seen so many problems with the supply chain right now that there are actually groups and conglomerates that are coming together to attempt to bypass this and make a brand new sort of beef conglomerate where they can all work together and get this out and undercut the big, for lack of a better word, big meat. People are trying to fight back against this right now and try to get the workers in to do so, but when you've got to pay American workers more and more to come back out and do this, you've got to pay the truckers more to come back out and do this, your prices are going to increase and go with it. All because a lot of them are still getting, well, not so much anymore because the unemployment has run out, but for so long they were getting paid more to not go back to work. And we still have some of the restrictions in place off of this. There is more blame than what's coming from the government, but the government does have to take a hand in what it is that they're doing and the policy prescriptions that are happening with this. It is time to slash some of the non-mandatory regulations off of this either. It's time to cut some of these down. And for God's sakes, get rid of the EPA bullshit. That'll fix up some of your trucking shortages right then and there. Alright. Speaking of, this is how you know how things are getting desperate here. This person got Darwined. I'm going to take that down just a touch. Man killed while trying to steal catalytic converter, deputies say. From Fox 5 Atlanta Digital Team. This is out of Fox 32 Chicago. A man was killed after investigators say he was crushed by the very car from which he was trying to cut a catalytic converter. It happened Wednesday in the driveway of a home in the 3900 block of West Unionville, Indian Trail Road, near Monroe, North Carolina, Union County. Sheriff's deputies were called out to the home around 5:45 p.m. after the homeowner found the body of a man under his Toyota Prius. Detectives say the man appeared to be in the middle of cutting off the exhaust pipe to get to the catalytic converter when the jack slipped, bringing the car down on him, killing him. The owner of the Prius was not home at the time. A catalytic converter and the small amount of scrap value it holds is not worth the risk of losing your life, the Union County Sheriff's Office, especially for a Prius. That's one of the small ones. I mean, we can go look and see what it is for small foreign right now. Because, in fact, I still have the scrap metal prices bookmarked. Small foreign cat, $184 each. And that's on the national average. It might be smaller or lower at the time. But this guy lost his life over $184. Catalytic converter thefts have been on the rise during the Pinko-Pox pandemic, with several law enforcement agencies even offering rewards leading to the arrest and indictment of those involved in several series of thefts. Deputies said the man, whose name was not officially released, was reported missing earlier in the day by his wife. Yeah, and they take that super seriously too, by the way, as far as thefts and everything that go with this. Where I work, sometimes I'll get some of the... I don't want to go into this one. I'm going to tell that one off air. Never mind. But what I can say is that, yeah, the scrapyards, when it comes to some of the stuff, even if you have it legitimately, are going through every single avenue to make sure that there isn't some major problem with any of this. Going above and beyond to make sure that what they're getting in isn't stolen. From the Daily Wire, more inflation news. Gas up 58%, meat up 13%, inside the newest record-breaking inflation report. On Friday, the Bureau of Labor Statistics revealed the customer price inflation in the U.S. has reached a rate of 6.8%, the largest year-over-year increase since June of 1982, as well as the sixth straight month in which inflation remained above 5%. Inflation is the erosion of a currency's purchasing power over time. More dollars chasing fewer goods implies a diminished value for each dollar, resulting in pinched budgets for Americans who do not experience wage increases to match the rising price levels. As summarized by CNBC, the following are some of the largest consumer price jumps between November of 2020 and November of 2021. Gas, 58.1%. Used vehicle, 31.4%. Yes, the Ford dealer is continually trying to get me to sell them my truck. And they won't give me the number that I want because, well, the number that I want is more than 31.4%. It's more than what I paid. They keep offering me more than what I paid for it. I could pay off my loan with what they want from me. I could pay off the loan on my truck and have a nice down payment for something new, but the next thing I get is going to have compression ignition. And they can't clear the down payment and the pricing. They can't give me the pricing on that either. Because if I do trade off this truck, the next model up from this truck, it's either the truck's going to have 250,000 miles on it, which given how little bit I drive right now is going to take a long time. But yeah, if I ever get rid of the particular truck that I have, it's going to have like 250,000 miles on it. Or there's going to be something sitting outside over there with a 6.7 diesel in it. In blue with an extended cab, which is almost impossible to find at this point. I found one. In all my time searching, I found one, and it was down in Indiana. And they wanted 40 grand for it. It was an 11. Hotels, 25.5%. Meat, poultry, and fish, 13.1%. Furniture and bedding, 11.8%. New vehicles, 11.1%. Domestic services, 10.2%. Jewelry, 6.7%, which I'm not surprised that's not going up at all because there's I don't think a lot of market for that right now. There's still a market. There's always going to be a market for it, but it's not going to be as big as it is during good times. Electricity, 6.5%. Food, 6.1%. Apparel, 5%. Milk, 4.6%. Fruits and vegetables, 4%. Now let's look at some of these here and just what's going on with this. Now, you know, your used vehicle, you do that probably once every, your average family probably does that once every 3 to 5 years. Let's be completely realistic about this. It's not people like me who are going to hold on to things forever and keep fixing them. But that's one that's not going to hit a lot of people unless they are getting the big demand and the big, hey, come in and sell your vehicle because we need inventory kind of thing. But like meat, poultry, and fish, 13.1%. They're not putting dry goods into this either. Well, food, 6.1%. But well, in addition to with the 58.1% increase on gas, because that is going to be one that most people are going to use every day. But like used vehicle, hotels, unless you're doing a lot of traveling there, domestic services, those are things. Those are things you can cut out of your. If they do get too expensive, you can cut out of this. New vehicle, especially as well. That's one that you can cut out. That's not one that's going to hit you. Like jewelry, apparel, you could even arguably cut out to some extent off of this. But what are you buying week after week? Gas, meat, poultry, and fish. Domestic services, go to the restaurant. You can cut some of that out every once in a while. Food, electricity, milk, fruits and vegetables. Those are going to add up time over time because those are the ones that people are buying over and over again. We have a problem with inflation in this country that we need to address. All right, let's talk about the pinko fucking pox. From the New York Times, another article in line with one that we looked at yesterday, with the gentleman saying that hospitals should be quietly triaging people to the back if they're unvaccinated, from the appropriately named Charles M. Blow. I'm furious at the unvaccinated. This is from the New York Times op-ed page, otherwise known as Knucklehead Row. I recently found out that a friend of mine, smart guy, was not vaccinated, and I confronted him about that. How could he have not gotten the vaccination, and how had he not seen fit to tell me and our other mutual friends? Wasn't he worried about the risk he was posing, not just to himself, but to the rest of us? He tried to laugh it off, offering up a bunch of concerns rooted in conspiracy theories, but I told him that he had to go get vaccinated, period. The next time I saw him, he was worried about the Omicron variant, and I asked him if I would go with him to get the jab. I texted him a site where he could register and told him to let me know once he had. That was Saturday. He still hadn't signed up. I'm disappointed. I'm angry. Not just with my friend, but with all the people who are choosing not to get vaccinated. There was a point earlier on in the pandemic when vaccines were still scarce, and I tried to be tolerant with holdouts, tried not to shame them, tried not to be angry with them, tried to allow them time to educate themselves about the benefits of getting vaccinated. Boy, this doesn't sound like a religion or anything. But that time has long since passed. Call me one of the intolerant, but that's what I am. That's correct. That is what you are. I will not coddle willful ignorance anymore. I will not indulge the fool's errand of I'm still doing my own research anymore either. The virus has already killed nearly 800,000 Americans. Citation needed, please. Infected nearly 50 million. We're now averaging about 120,000 new cases a day. Let's look at that number for just a second by itself. Okay, 50 million. That is a 50 followed by 6 zeros. Okay, actually we need to go the other one first. 800,000. If we take their number at their word, 800,000. That is an 8 followed by 5 zeros. Divided by 50 million. That is a 5 followed by 7 zeros. Okay, let's actually make sure, let's make sure you guys can see this and we're not doing any chicanery here. That is 0.016% death rate. So now we take 1 minus 0.016 times 100 for the statistic. That is a 98.4% survival rate, whether vaccinated or unvaccinated. Yes, it's a scary number. 800,000 people died. 50 million people got it. That is 98.4%. And it's mostly taken the elderly on top of that. And once again, I don't trust these numbers any farther than I can throw them either. But that is not even a blip on the radar compared to survivability. It's not. And I don't trust any of this either. We do have the difference between died of COVID and died with COVID. And there are people who have had bad symptoms there. Our friend Seawall has a person adjacent to him who has got bad symptoms. He looks like he's on the road to recovery right now. There are people that have died from this. I understand that. But the only reason, and Charlie Blow did himself a complete disservice here by putting the 800,000 immediately next to 50 million. Because usually, if you notice, the media usually doesn't do that. Usually, when they talk about this thing, it's either one or the other. 50 million infections! Or somewhere else, completely further away in the article, or not even in the article at all, in a completely separate article. 800,000 deaths! Citation needed, please. The virus is deadly and unrelenting. Not according to those numbers, it's not. The only way out of the situation for our country and the world is through the vaccines. We must dramatically shrink the number of people vulnerable to the virus, or else we risk allowing our population to act as a petri dish for the growth of new variants. That is such a disingenuous idea. The vaccinated are the ones that are pulling the new variants, especially if they get deadlier because they have to find a way to get around the goddamn vaccine. In July, Michael Sagg, a professor of medicine and infectious diseases expert at University of Alabama in Birmingham, told The Guardian, unvaccinated people are basically the cannon fodder of the virus. The virus needs people to infect in order to replicate, and the more people it has that are vulnerable or susceptible to infection, the more likely it will mutate. So there it is. If you didn't go out and get the jab, you are an evil person. So says the aptly named Charlie Blow. Kroger is getting in on this. Kroger to take away paid COVID benefits, which is fine, it's time, and add insurance surcharges for the unvaccinated employees. From Melissa Repko. But don't worry, it's not a second-class citizen. Kroger said Tuesday it will take away paid leave for unvaccinated employees who get the pinko pox and require some of them to pay a monthly health insurance surcharge starting next year. The nation's largest supermarket operator sent a company-wide memo announcing the changes, which take effect January 1st. A company spokeswoman said the new policies are intended to encourage staff to get the pinko pox jab, added it will continue to offer a $100 incentive to all employees who became fully vaccinated. As we prepare to navigate the next phase of the pandemic, we're modifying policies to encourage safe behaviors, including vaccination, she said in a statement. Starting next year, salaried non-union employees who are unvaccinated and enrolled in the company's health insurance plan must pay a $50 surcharge monthly, the company spokeswoman said, but employees who are fully vaccinated are eligible for paid COVID leave if they get a breakthrough case. The Kroger news was first reported by the Wall Street Journal. The announcement comes as the spread of the Omicron variant creates new uncertainty of how businesses should operate when corporate employees will return to the office. New York and California have reinstated mask mandates regardless of vaccination status. That's led to retailers posting entrance signs reminiscent of the earlier months of the pandemic, reminding customers they must put on their masks before stepping inside. Some companies, including Google, have pushed back plans to require employees to return to the office in January. Well, yeah, I mean, if you're doing data entry, there's no real reason to come back out and jump straight in. Other companies have tightened rules around the vaccinations or added penalties to employees who do not get them starting November. Delta employees must pay a $200 monthly surcharge for health insurance. Control the health insurance, control the population. What did I tell you? Right from 2008. Control the health insurance, control healthcare, control the population. Now we're seeing it happen in real time. But don't worry, you guys. If we have universal socialized medicine, there won't be death panels. Even though we're making bills, we're passing bills, and we're doing things to make sure that people, we control the people that we insure. From the BBC, Nicaragua receives China vaccines after cutting ties with Taiwan. Control the healthcare. Control the population. Nicaragua has received 1 million COVID vaccines from China days after it cut diplomatic ties with Taiwan in favor of Beijing. Government representatives returned to the Central American state on Sunday with news of donation. Local media broadcast clips of Air China plane landing with the first 200,000 doses of the Sinopharm vaccine. Officials say they were extremely grateful for restored relationships with Beijing. We have come back from this great news that we have brought this donation of 1 million vaccinates to the Nicaraguan people, said Laureano Ortega Murillo, the son of Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega, and one of his advisors. So there you go. Do what China says and you get vaccines. Hey, President Biden, you know who you should have been giving these vaccines away from instead of trying them to forcefully shove them in the arms of your own people? Nicaragua was looking for them, and they wanted them willingly. You could have been a hero. You could have donated 1 million doses to Nicaragua. The Blaze, hospitals, maybe firing unvaccinated staff isn't such a great idea after all. And there's the banner from the beginning of the Pinko Pox. Heroes work here! From Chris Field. Hundreds of thousands of hospital staff members, from nurses and doctors to janitors and receptionists, worked in hospital settings for nearly a year dealing with the pinko pox patients while unvaxxed. They did their duty and were repeatedly heralded as heroes. But after the vaccines came out, how were they treated by the same society and government that had just sung their praises? President Biden rewarded them by issuing a mandate that healthcare workers at facilities take Medicare or Medicaid money would have to get vaxxed or hit the bricks. And because many hospital systems across the U.S. were waiting for the government to act first to give them cover, they followed suit and issued their own mandates. But it didn't work out as well as they'd hoped. Hospitals, which are already facing labor shortages before the pandemic began, saw thousands of nurses exit instead of taking the jab, the Wall Street Journal reported. Add that to the fact that those hesitant to get the vaccine made up 30% of all staff, not just nurses, and you've got the makings of what experts call a fustercluck. Hospitals needed a way to get out from under their self-imposed staffing crisis created, at least in part, by their mandates. Enter the late November federal court suspension of the Fed's vax mandate. After a federal judge temporarily blocked the mandate, the Journal reported some of the nation's biggest hospital systems suddenly decided to drop their own ill-considered vaccine mandates. HCA Healthcare, Tenet Healthcare Corp., Advent Health, and the Cleveland Clinic all announced that they're dropping their jab requirements, which had exacerbated the hospital's cost of labor problems and caused all kinds of issues with staff retention, the paper said. The Journal talked to employees benefits lawyer Wade Simons, who noted the mass exodus debacle and said facilities don't have the vax requirements could be a magnet for health professionals looking to practice health away from mandates. Alan Levine, CEO of Ballot Health, which has 21 hospitals in Tennessee and Virginia with 14,000 employees, said the federal court did everybody a favor by stopping the mandate, the Journal said. According to Levine, his company has 2,000 folks unvaccinated, and he said that canning that many people would have been devastating to our system. HCA, which is one of the country's largest collections of hospitals, with some 275,000 employees, announced last month that all of its workers would need to be vaxxed by the federal January 4th deadline, but then suspended the oh-so-very important vaccine policy after the court ruled against the Biden admin. It is funny to me, and I hate to cite the girl because, she tried to keep me simping for her for a year, but just ran off with some other dude, but my ex-girlfriend, who is a nurse in the area, in the immediate area around here, not around here, but like around the Chicago area, said when the vaccines first came out and they were first starting talking about getting them and possibly even doing mandates way back at the beginning of last year, she said that she was probably not going to get the vaccine, and a lot of the doctors in her hospital had said that you would be crazy to go out and get this vaccine. And this wasn't back under the Trump administration. This was in like March of last year. That a lot of the doctors in that particular system said that you shouldn't be doing that. There's no way you should be doing something like that. And probably about a month later, she went out and got the vaccine, which that was one of the first things I said. And what did I say right from the beginning? If you think this is the best way for you to go and ensure your livelihood, your way of living, then do it. I don't believe that's the best way for me to ensure my livelihood or my health. So I have not gotten it. I have not received the vaccination because I don't find that to be the best way to protect my health. But it's just interesting the way that this all turned. And even the same hospital system coming out and telling people who just a month before had said, oh, you're crazy if you go out and get this thing, are now saying, yes, get it, or you won't have a job. You won't be able to work. So, that's where we're at with that. It's interesting the way this all shifts. All right, from the LA Times. Leaked SoCal hospital records reveal huge automated markups for healthcare. From David Lazarus. Ridiculous, seemingly arbitrary Price markups are a defining characteristic of the $4 trillion U.S. healthcare system and a key reason Americans pay more for treatment than anyone else around the world. But to see price hikes as much as 675% being imposed in real time automatically by a hospital's computer system still takes your breath away. That's what happens when government gets involved in your healthcare. I got to view this for myself after a former operating room nurse at Scripps Memorial Hospital in Encinitas shared with me some screenshots of the facility's electronic health record system. The nurse asked that I not use her name because she's now working at a different Southern California medical facility and worries that her job could be endangered. Her screenshots were taken earlier this year speak for themselves. What they show are price hikes ranging from 575% to 675% being automatically generated by the hospital software. Well, it's against the law not to have health insurance in this country, thank you to the mandate. So your insurance company will cover it. The eye-popping increases are so routine, apparently the software even displays the formula it uses to convert reasonable medical costs into billed amounts that are much, much higher. For example, one screenshot is for sutures, that is medical thread, aka stitches. Script system put basic cost per unit at $19.30. But the system said the computed charge per unit was $149.58. This is how much the patient and his or her insurer would be billed. The system helpfully indicated the formula for reaching this amount, $149.58 equals $19.30 plus $19.30 times 675%. You read that right. Scripps' automated system took the actual cost of sutures imposed at apparently a preset 675% markup and produced a billed amount that was orders of magnitude higher than the true price. This is separate from any additional charges for the doctor, anesthesiologist, x-rays, or hospital facilities. Call it institutionalized price gouging, and it's apparently widespread because the same or similar software is used by other hospitals nationwide, including UCLA and around the world. And yet, a free market would have fixed this. Because if the people can't afford to go to the hospital, then they go to the hospital and you don't get any money, not even a dime of that $19.30 back. Alright, now for one of the last big news items of the day. One that I did want to make sure that we got to today. Because I know we're running up on the clock here. I got to get out of here really soon. But this one, Twitch partner Hassan Abi at Hassan the Hun has been banned. And now I am not going to say that word. It's on the screen because I'm on Twitch and they're probably looking for it algorithmically right now. But from Insider, leftist streamer Hassan Piker says Twitch banned him for using the word that starts with a C, and it's something you usually put in your soup. From Kieran Press Reynolds. Twitch star Hassan Piker was banned from the platform on Monday for using the word... Not going to say it. The leftist political commentator made the claim in a tweet on Monday night. Piker streams under the handle Hassan Abi and has over 1.6 million followers on Twitch, according to data analytics website Social Blade. His Twitch channel was unavailable to view as of Tuesday morning. Although the ban is likely temporary, Twitch streamers, even popular ones, regularly get temporarily banned for violating rules. Piker has not publicly commented on when or if his channel will be reinstated. The term object that it's good to put peanut butter on and eat as a side dish, or make a peanut butter sandwich with, then dip it in chocolate. That's one of my favorite Christmas cookies. Which is sometimes used as a racial epithet for white people, dates back to before the 17th century, according to NPR. And as a complicated history, it's considered a demeaning term by many white people in the southern US, according to CNN, who... Anybody I know that gets called that takes it as a term of endearment. Twitch prohibits using hateful slurs, either undirected or targeted toward another individual, according to its hateful conduct and harassment policy. Piker's tweet has over 58,000 likes and almost 5,000 retweets, with many other popular Twitch streamers like the Minecraft player Dream and Matthew Mitskiff Ronaldo commenting jokes about the word item that you get sometimes in your bread basket in addition with the bread on the tweet. The follow-up tweet, he wrote that he probably never used the word before the weekend. Piker and Twitch did not respond to requests for comment. Now, I think that Hasan Piker should have his voice out there. I think that he should be able to spread his hateful message because it's much easier when he's speaking out in major platforms for us to come back out and debunk it and show him that he's full of shit. But once again, I don't think anybody should be silenced or banned off of this. But I know Piker doesn't have the same feeling towards me, and that's why I want to take a little bit of a victory lap about this, because Piker could probably stumble onto this channel and start hitting the mass report button and then put a tweet out there to get all of his little fucking socialist buddies out there to show up on this channel and start hitting the report button and mass flag and get this channel taken down. He does believe that any opinion other than his should be censored. So while I think it's shameful that Twitch is doing the censoring like this, and Piker should go on to alt media platforms, I hear DLive is awesome. I know he doesn't have the same sentiment to me, and I have to take a victory lap because of that. Ha! Your own rules hit you, you dumb fuck. And you know who else got hit? This pedo. Vosh banned from Twitch indefinitely after Hasan Piker's suspension. From Biliz Mustafa. His suspension, streamer Vosh claims he's been banned from Twitch indefinitely because of a live stream in which he allegedly used a hateful slur. His suspension comes after fellow streamer Hasan Piker's account was suspended on Monday. It is believed that Vosh commented on Piker's suspension during his own live stream, but found himself banned for an unspecified period too. Twitch allegedly suspended Piker for the use of the term. They come in townhouse variety. It's not the thing that our British friends call chips, because those are French fries. It's what our British friends call biscuits. Vosh, whose real name is Ian Kokinski, is a 27-year-old YouTuber and Twitch streamer who enjoys the company of minors. He grew up in Beverly Hills. His father worked as a Hollywood exec and his mother as a filmmaker. So basically, once again, he's a champagne socialist. He had everything handed to him in billions of dollars worth of assets at his disposal. And now he decides that the rich people must pay. Vosh has gained 384,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel, in which he broadcasts live streams about debates, current events, and critique media. Taking to Twitter on Monday, December 13th, Vosh claimed his Twitch account has been suspended indefinitely just after ending a live stream. I was banned right after the stream ended, LMAO, he wrote in the comments section of his YouTube video. The streamer shared a screenshot from a Twitch email he claimed he received that stated, "Based on a review of your activity or content, we've issued a community guideline strike on your account. Due to the severe nature of this violation, or the fact that you've incurred multiple violations, your access to Twitch services is indefinitely restricted." The alleged Twitch email, which you can read below, the streaming platform gave the reason Vosh's suspension as hateful slurs or symbols. "Indefinite no less. Proud of Twitch for finally taking a stand against anti-white racism," Vosh wrote in a follow-up tweet. HITC has reached out to both Vosh and Twitch for comment. Yeah, they're hitting hard on some of this stuff too, and I know a lot of it's algorithmic, and like I say, Hasan Piker is going to go pay his $1 million lawyer to go and get this overturned, because this is a detriment to Hasan Piker's income. It's, I believe, one of his only income streams is his Twitch stream. He might be getting some from Google too, but that's one of the only ones is his Twitch streaming. And he'll go back and get it overturned. But like, if I got popped for saying something like that. Well, you'd be watching this on Twitch under a different screen name. And I'd be working to get back to affiliated status again. By the way, thank you to all the champions who sit through a 30-second ad to watch this show. You guys don't go unnoticed. That's appreciated. That's 2 cents in my pocket. 2 whole cents, you guys. And there again, Vosh, as much as I disagree with his opinion, has the right to come out and should have the platform to come out and say whatever stupid fucking bullshit that he wants. He should leave the kids alone, but he should be able to come out and say whatever stupid fucking bullshit he wants. But he wouldn't say the same thing to me, and he's another one who would go and get his